Japan. What associations come to mind when you hear this word? In the modern world, it means reliability, thoughtfulness, pedantry, coherence, responsibility, quality, diligence. Indeed, the Japanese people are a very meticulous people, paying attention to detail, and in this, we Americans have much to learn from them. Japan is a brand. The people of Japan are quality. That is why we admire Japanese technology, its reliability and quality. That is why many of us would like to have some Japanese thing, because the stamp "Made in Japan" speaks for itself. What's the history of the Japanese? Many nations admire it, to carry it through many millennia and preserve it. Not every nation manages. But wait, that's not what this channel is about. So let's start looking for facts, and maybe we'll prove otherwise. Come on, Robert. So, what do we know from the history of the land of the rising sun? For example, from my favorite Wikipedia, the first signs of settlement of the Japanese archipelago appeared in the Paleolithic era, about 38,000, 39,000 years ago. There's even a map of what Japan was like back then. Well, I have questioned such dates many times if you believe that. Then welcome to the Wikipedia portal. I couldn't read any more of this nonsense. Let's go back in time to Daniel Keller's 1590 map. For some reason, we do not see the archipelago as it exists today and depicted in earlier periods. Maybe Keller got it wrong. Let's look at the other outlines of Asia. India as India. The Arabian Peninsula, which is so dear to us, also looks similar. Turkey is in place. But the absence of the Korean Peninsula is conspicuous. And this is the map of Asia, created in 1578 by Gerard de Jode. Here too, Japan looks like a single island. And there is no Korean peninsula here either. So, is the history of Korea a fake? Well, let's leave that to the Koreans, and let's get back to our Japanese brothers. And then there are the maps, Ortelius Atlas, 1570. And the last one is Gerard Mercator, 1575. Let's take a closer look at one of the maps and read the place names. Bandu, Hormar, Nogru, the Japanese language of the time, and the names of the island Iapon and Kanagawa. Only the last name is more or less the same as the modern pronunciation of Kagoshima. Here it is on the map, and the prefecture of the same name. Let's read more modern names of cities in Japan near Kagoshima. Fukuoka, Miyazaki, Kumamoto. Seems to be a completely different language. Write in the comments who else also thought the same. I hope I'm not the only one. And this is already engraving Nicolas de LARMESSIN one from the site Royal Collection Trust, which depicts the Emperor of Japan Xogun, Empereur du Japon. The exact year of reign is difficult to establish, but here on the site it says 1641 to 1680. A rough translation of the engraving of a few sentences goes like this: a large and extensive region containing a large number of islands washed by the sea. This area was discovered by the Portuguese 130 years ago. This great Eastern Empire consists of 76 small territories, have many castles and fortresses. On the large islands, wheat grows in abundance. There are many species of game. There are mines of gold, silver, copper, iron, lead, and mercury. Their religion is centered on 9 pagan deities, but they also had a Christian religion after several Jesuit missions. So there were minerals on the islands, although Japan is now considered poor in minerals, and this makes up the lion's share of its imports. And a couple of other images, the Emperor of Japan and the Japanese from Menesson Mallet's album of 1683, I think you can see the resemblance to the previous engraving. And this is already KAOGUN, Empereur du Japon engraving by Pierre Duflos, 1780. Here you have modern images of Japanese emperors. You can see that they are drawn by type and template drawer did not even bother to change the pose of the model, and the faces are almost identical. One cannot distinguish from the other. Now consider the architecture of the Japanese in the 19th century. Probably it was very different from other countries, as Japan was isolated from the outside world for more than 2 centuries since 1639, until the arrival of Commodore Matthew Perry in Japan in 1854, to which we'll come back again. Tokyo Station, built of red brick. Is it just me, or is it submerged in the ground, like 2 meters? Here's a modern view. If we pay attention to the people in the photo, there are some dressed as traditional outfits, but there are also some dressed as Europeans. It's as if there were 2 peoples, or rather 2 different civilizations. And this is the layout of Tokyo. No chaotic. Everything is like in Europe or America of that time. The city of Kobe. And here is a monument with an eagle. It seemed, well, so what, Robert? And the fact that the eagle is not a Japanese sacred animal, what makes the main symbol of antiquity in the land of the rising sun? Next, let's talk about the people who settled Japan. One of them is the Ainu. The Ainu are one of the few large ethnic minorities in the Japanese islands with a distinct and unique culture and way of life. They have been subjected to forced assimilation and colonization by the much larger Yamato population in Japan since at least the 18th century. Japanese assimilation policies in the 19th century during the Meiji Restoration included the expulsion of the Ainu from their lands. This, in turn, forced them to abandon traditional lifestyles such as subsistence hunting and fishing. The Ainu were not allowed to practice their religion and were forced into Japanese language schools, where speaking the Ainu language was strictly forbidden. And that quote I got from Wikipedia. Remember, what the Japanese were doing was forced assimilation. The views of the Ainu on the structure of the world are also interesting. There are 6 tiers of upper worlds and 6 tiers of lower worlds. The most significant of them are Kana Mosiri, the upper world. This is the world in which the Ainu live, and at the same time the first tier of the upper world. It is arranged in the form of an island resting on the back of a giant salmon. Nitne Komui Mosiri is the wet underworld, which is the first tier of the underworlds. This dark world is where bad people go after death and where evil demons reside. It is located directly beneath Kana Mosiri, the world of humans. Thus, this world is a distinctly formed concept of hell. Where there is a hell, there must also be a paradise. This paradise is Komui Mosiri 1 of the subterranean worlds, and it is there that good people go after death, living there with good deities. The only inconvenience of this paradise is that one has to live there upside down. Similarity with Slavic views on the world of Nav, Yav, Prav. In the 19th century, a real lawlessness began. The Japanese forced Ainu men to cut their beards, women were forbidden to wear traditional Ainu clothes, and the celebration of the Ainu national holiday, the Bear Festival, was forbidden. The Japanese transported all the North Kuril Ainu to Shikotan Island, took away all their fishing gear and boats, and forbade them to go to sea without permission, thus condemning them to starvation. Most of the inhabitants of the reservation died out. Only 20 people remained. In Sakhalin, the Ainu were in bondage to seasonal Japanese industrialists who came for the summer. The Japanese blocked the mouths of large spawning rivers, so fish simply did not reach the upper reaches, and the Ainu had to go to the seashore to get some food. Here they immediately became dependent on the Japanese. The Japanese gave the Ainu fishing gear and took the best of the catch, but the Ainu were forbidden to have their own gear. With the departure of the Japanese, the Ainu were left without a sufficient supply of fish, and by the end of winter, they almost always had famine, and the population died out. So much for the Japanese, who are presented to us as a peace-loving people who preserve their culture. More likely, they simply appropriated centuries-old traditions of other peoples, such as the Ainu. Today, according to the official census, there are only about 25,000 Ainu in Japan. They have been forced to forget their native language. They do not know their own culture, which today is passed off as Japanese culture. One of the most unique peoples in history has been virtually destroyed, robbed, and forgotten. Back to the American Commodore Matthew Perry, who arrived on the Black Ships in 1853 and 1854, forcing Japan to end its policy of isolation. From these events, Japan entered an era of modernization. Black ships were named after American warships that arrived at Uraga Harbor, part of present-day Yokosuka in Kanagawa Prefecture, under the command of U.S. Navy Commodore Matthew Perry, because old-built sailing ships have a black hull color, and coal smoke from the chimneys of old steamers is used as fuel. Commodore Perry's force of warships became a major factor in the negotiation and subsequent signing of the Kanagawa Treaty of Trade between Japan and the United States, thus effectively ending more than 2 centuries of Japan trading only with China and Holland. In February 1854, Perry returned with 7 warships and, under threat of shelling in Edo Strait, forced the Shogun to sign the Treaty of Peace and Friendship, which established diplomatic relations between Japan and the United States. Now that's friendship. Only with whom the United States actually signed such a friendly treaty, after which the Meiji Restoration began, you can guess for yourself. Well, and we must mention the samurai of Japan without them. Courageous, strong men, like real Japanese or not. This photo is of Sadao Iinuma, the only surviving member of the young samurai unit. Sadao Iinuma unsuccessfully performed harakiri and survived. He died in 1931, at the age of 79. He worked as a postal official in Sendai, Japan. Today, his photo portrait is on display at the Memorial Complex on Mount Imoriyama in Aizu Wakamatsu, Japan. That's all? Conclusions make yourself who are the Japanese and how they honor their distinctive culture. Thank you all for watching. Please give me a like if you liked the video, I'd love it. And subscribe, there's a lot more to come. See you in the future.